All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today's lecture is going to be about what the mission of the healer actually is. But before I get into that, I think I need to teach you guys another fundamental principle which you need to understand before we get into anything else at all. Check this out. You see this drip? That's Supreme Jean Paul Gaultier right there. I am teaching you guys driponomics. How are you gonna learn anything in the world without first studying the art and the craft of driponomics? You gotta pull up to the lecture dripped out. As there's a Migos song where Takeoff goes like, "Watch how I dress, I'm the drippin' professor. Watch how I dress, I'm the drippin' professor." Isn't that genius, right? Because like I kind of relate to that guy now because I'm a professor over here and I'm dripping. So I am the dripping professor, right? And what about your professor? Your professor probably comes to the lecture with a old wrinkly t-shirt, that his wife made sure to iron him. Yeah, no drip. How are you gonna influence the masses without first mastering the craft of driponomics? Please explain me that. Now, enough of that. Let's get into some serious business. What is the mission of the healer? Now, Samuel Hahnemann, who was the founder of homeopathy, pretty much he was born in 1755, and the state of health and medicine and what people knew and understood about disease, viruses, bacteria, health, that kind of stuff, it was very, very different than what we have going on today, right? And the way I'm able to explain it the best is by reading the first aphorism out of the Organon of Medicine, which for homeopaths is like the Holy Bible, because this book contains the fundamental principles which you must master to be a good homeopath. Now, what is the first thing that he writes about in this book? Let me read this quote. "The physician's high and only mission is to restore the sick to health and not dabble in superficial hypotheses or conduct systems based on speculation." So, what does that mean? Let me explain this quote for a while. The physician basically means the doctor, the person who is practicing the art of healing, right? His high and only mission. What does the high mean? Now, Samuel Hahnemann believed that every person is here for a reason and that there is a deeper reason for our being on this planet, that we are here and everybody is here on a specific mission and a purpose, right? And every single person has their unique one, right? And the physician's high and only mission is to restore the sick to health, which and not dabble in superficial hypotheses or conduct systems based on speculation. Now, what does the second part mean? Now, that basically means that during Samuel Hahnemann's time, which was, he was born in 1755, so around that time, you can imagine that, as I said, medicine was in a complete barbaric and unstructured state. There was no fixed principle which would have resulted in healing. It was just everybody was confused. And the only thing that doctors or physicians could do is speculate regarding the theme of what's gonna cure health. And why was medicine in such a barbaric state? Now we get into a very, very, very fun part of the video, and I'm actually super excited about that. Let's get it. Now, what type of practices did we have during Hahnemann's time? Let me talk about some of that stuff. Now, they used bloodletting, as they believe that, if you're ill, that means there's something in your blood. And if you cut if you make a cut and get rid of some of that blood, then all the bad blood is going to go away. What actually ends up happening is that you just lose blood, and many people have died from this practice, but they believe that was good. What else did they use? They used leeches to suck out the bad blood, to suck out the contaminated blood. And an interesting thing about the leeches is that they're going to consume 4 times the weight in blood of their own body weight. So if a leech weighs 100 grams, they are capable of sucking up 400 grams of blood. And with leeches, it was never one being used. It was like a whole pack of leeches that was used. Kind of nasty stuff. Now, they didn't know how drugs affected us on like a, on a deeper level. So what doctors ended up doing is prescribing kids and people completely insane things, such as, heroin in a cough syrup for children, cocaine to cure whatever, hay fever, and as soon as like, for example, tobacco or coffee or a specific type of tea would appear in a certain country, then doctors would basically start using that and experimenting with those, teas, coffees, tobaccos, heroin, all that stuff, and trying to have it work in a curative way. Now, I strongly believe that if you give a kid cough syrup with, I don't know, morphium mixed with alcohol and cannabis and, I don't know, heroin all at the same time, the kid's gonna feel pretty good. And I think he's gonna even forget about the fact that he ever had any disease in the first place, which is why a lot of doctors, believe that they were hyper successful at healing people when actually they were just drug dealers, as we may put it. Now, there have been women which have attempted to cure patients using herbal remedies, natural plant-based remedies. But what ended up happening with these women is that they were just condemned to be witches, and usually they ended up getting, burned alive, burned at stake, or just executed in a different way, because education, especially medical education, was not available to women back in that time. So men who, were seen as above women were seen as a second-class citizen back in the day, right? So if a woman was able to have any basic knowledge of mathematics or medicine, then it must mean that she's a witch, because she never got educated. Who gave knowledge to this second-class citizen? And yeah, that basically just means that a lot of these healers, a lot of these herbal healers who were women, were basically murdered for the fact that they tried to help people, because, men believed that they were witches. And what else? That's an unfortunate side of history right there. But also the king. What is the king's touch? Now, they believe that the king was, in a way, chosen by God. The king was selected, right? And since the king was kind of chosen by God, that means that the king is like above humans. The king is like a holy entity. Nowadays, we understand that, like, the president of a country, sure, he has more power, more status, more money, that kind of stuff, more influence over the world, but he is a human being just like the rest of us, right? But Back in the day, they believed that the king is in a way holy because chosen by God. And they basically believed that the king's touch, what they called the royal touch, was able to cure any disease. So, I'm going to be suffering from the plague, and I'm going to go visit the king. And if he's kind enough and generous enough to, just give me a little touch on the forehead, that would cure every disease that I have, right? Now, also during that time, religion obviously was way more powerful and influential than it is today. So what people believed disease was, and the reason why people got sick, is that an evil entity evaded the body, a demonic spirit, you're possessed by a demon, which is why you have a cough, and what they did is invited priests and other religious sort of people to cast out demons out of people, because they believe that that is how you cure disease. They use things like snail slime to treat warts, and nowadays if you have a headache, it's probably due to dehydration. But what they did back in the day is that they believed it was kind of like the brain pushing against the skull, which is why you got a headache. So the only logical option is to take a drill and make a deep hole in your skull, because it's gonna, ameliorate some of that pressure, some of that built up pressure that you have going on there, right? And those were just some of the practices which they had back in the day. And nowadays we look at those things and think like, wow, how barbaric, how stupid, right? How obviously, unstructured, unprofessional, stuff like that. But what we also need to understand is that in 200 years, in 300 years, people are going to look at the way that we do medicine now and the way we treat people now, and they're going to say the exact same thing. They're going to say the exact same thing. How barbaric were those people, It's very easy for us to judge people in the past, but what we also need to understand is that the people of the future are going to judge us just as harshly, but we are trying to do the best of our current abilities. So yeah. Now let's go back to that first aphorism and let me kind of explain it again. Now, the physician's high and only mission is to restore the sick to health and not dabble in superficial hypotheses or construct systems based on speculation. Now, those things, all those weird practices that I just described, those are those speculations which physicians, doctors practiced back in the day, because there wasn't a fixed rule to medicine. There weren't fixed principles which, if you followed, would result in health. So the only choice that doctors of that time had was to basically speculate based on what could work, because that's the only thing they had. They didn't have anything. They could only assume that, yeah, this heroin stuff seems to be working, or the last guy who I drilled a hole into his skull, he seemed to be all right, so he's still doing fine, so let me keep repeating that. And Samuel Hahnemann, who has received a education as a physician and who had the license to practice medicine, what he ended up doing was actually abandoning that practice, because he believed that practicing medicine according to the way in which it was taught to him would have caused more damage than it would have done good, which is why he fully abandoned his profession and pretty much gave up, a lot of, status, money, that kind of stuff, because he believed that it was so wrong. And he wasn't able to, he saw that it's wrong. He saw that there's no structure. So he couldn't allow himself to partake in that. And he actually abandoned the practice of medicine for a long time, went back to translating medical journals because that guy was like a straight up genius. He knew like 7 languages. So what he would do is just translate medical text and make money that way, I think. And he only later on in his life returned towards medicine, which is when he built homeopathy and built the structure of homeopathy, which he describes in this organon right here. And what the organon of medicine does, what this book here does, is what he tries to do is lay out fixed principles of medicine, which if the physician would have followed, would consistently and reliably result in cure, which is something that has never existed in the medical space so far, right? Back then, it was not like you do this, it's gonna have a positive effect every single time. It's gonna have a curative effect every single time. It was like, oh, here it worked, here it didn't, here he died, here, he went insane, but here it worked, so, let me just keep doing it. That wasn't good enough for him, which is why he created a system surrounding medicine, which is why he created fixed principles, which he later describes that if you follow the principles and the rules which he laid out, you are going to actually cure people, and not just sometimes, but consistently cure people. You get what I mean? Yeah, that's pretty much it in a way. Right. Let me explain another quick concept because I don't want to turn this into a 40-minute video. I wanted to keep this, short and fun and entertaining and simple. But in a way, okay, let's see. I talked about the vital force in the past, right? In one of the videos before. So let's see. Wait. No, before I talk about that, yeah, so Hanuman, he expressed a lot of anger towards the physicians of his time because he saw the danger and the damage which they caused upon people, and he basically believed that the medics, the doctors of those times were just playing with people's lives because they didn't know what they were doing, right? And it wasn't right to, play with the life of a patient who entrusted their life to you, expecting to be cured, right? And the physician's job was to follow those principles and not let their ego or their fantasy get in the way of their work, which basically also means that he believed that the physician should not focus on anything else besides healing people, because people went into that profession for some very wrong reasons, as people do today as well, because doctors make a lot of money, and doctors have always been viewed as like very high up in society because health is a very important thing. A lot of very wealthy people realize that the moment that they become sick, they would have given up everything they have in order to just be healthy again. And people completely destroy their health in the pursuit of career and money, but once they have the career and the money and they lose the health, they realize that they would have given up everything they had to just be healthy again. And that is why doctors, physicians, always held a very high position in society, because we as human beings don't like to suffer, and we appreciate the people that relieve us of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual suffering, right? And yeah, he believed that is not the status which comes with being a doctor, the money which comes with being a doctor, is not why you should get into that profession. It is not why you should get into that job, right? Because it is what he believed a secondary effect. He explained it in a way that if you, as a doctor, fully pursue your higher mission, which is as simple as curing people and restoring the sick to health, then, and you followed that profession passionately and professionally, and you brought people results and you made people feel better, all the worldly things which the physician may also desire, such as money or status, that would just be a byproduct of his purpose. That would be a byproduct of the physician following his mission. You get what I mean? And, modern influencers sometimes explain that explain basically the same concept. It's a very old concept. It's that don't chase money, chase purpose. And if you chase your purpose, if you chase your mission, and you pursue your mission fully and completely, and you completely dedicate yourself towards that mission, then any other thing which you may desire is just gonna come to you automatically. You will be able to attract it just by being yourself. You won't even have to work. The money's gonna find its way to you. The status, the recognition, the fame and fortune is gonna find itself to you. You are gonna become a magnet instead of running after it. You will be able to sit back and attract anything that you desire, right? And I believe that. I do believe that, right? I believe that that is a worthy concept, because every time, me personally, every time that I've chased money and I've, only put the mission of getting money into my mind, it never worked out. It never worked out. When I ran after money, the money ran away from me. And I am yet to achieve a position where I attract it, but this is what I'm working on, right? It's a process. You gotta trust the process. I don't know why I'm doing this self-therapy right now, but I think some people are gonna be able to understand and relate to this. So yeah, Hanuman expressed that anger at the doctors of his time, because they were just playing with people's lives. And that anger, that rage, basically fueled him to create a system of medicine which actually works consistently and genuinely heals people, which is kind of interesting that sometimes in order to make a breakthrough, you need to become very angry. Sometimes in order to move up and achieve something and reach a certain level, you have to get angry. Because if you're not angry, if you're comfortable, if it doesn't hurt your soul on the deepest level, you're not going to move, you're not going to get up, you're going to keep suffering quietly. But if you get uncomfortable enough, the way that he did, because he saw the suffering which doctors cause, he saw the destruction which medicine is creating, and he couldn't sit still, he couldn't sleep at night until he invented a medicine which works. You get what I mean? It's kind of, yeah, it's interesting to think about. Let's see. Right. I think that's pretty much it. I just wanted to explain this kind of simple concept, which is that the physician's high and only mission is to restore the sick to health. And that's it. It's as simple as that. Your mission as a healer is to heal and not chase status, recognition, fame, fortune. not try to invent a new system of healing. Follow the principles which have been laid out for you. Follow the rules. Play by the book, follow the rules which have been laid out for you and study it to the best of your ability. Follow it, practice it to the best of your ability. And you're going to see consistent results, consistent positive results. And that is what Hahnemann tried to describe in the first aphorism of the Organon. Let me repeat it one more time, just so it kind of sticks in your mind. The physician's high and only mission is to restore the sick to health and not dabble in superficial hypotheses or construct systems based on speculation. Have a good day, guys. See you in the next one.